So on behalf of Chessa and Bernice and Gordon, who have joined us on this call, we're so excited to have you here for this special session with our board chair, Scott Sipprelle, who, like you, is celebrating a big reunion, his 40th reunion. And we're so excited to have Scott speak to us this afternoon. I have to say, I'm so ingrained into the St. Andrews calendar that I've been wandering around today looking for you all. It's very unusual to be on the first or second weekend in June and not see 300, 400 alumni scattered all across the campus. And so it was a little bit of an unusual day, but let me just give you a sense of a couple of things that were happening today that give you a sense of the wonderful moment of transition that we're in. So I looked out onto the pond about a half hour ago and I saw the Knoxontown Navy, and I saw our head-elect Joy McGrath coxing the Knoxontown Navy down the very quiet but beautiful Knoxontown Pond. And at the time that Joy was coxing on Knoxontown Pond, Elizabeth and I were posing for our portrait. Right there at 3:30, 3:45, 4 o'clock, we had this moment where these two moments of St. Andrews history were crossing. And we're obviously very, very excited about this transition that's about to take place. Even though you're not all here right now, I wanted to convey how excited we are about the present and the future of St. Andrews. We today in 2021 have an outstanding board of trustees, a great teaching faculty, an amazing staff, and our students and parents and past parent and alumni body comprise this amazing web of St. Andreans who are all across the United States and the world doing very, very important and inspirational work. And we have at St. Andrews tremendous consensus and unification about the kind of school we seek to be and are, and the kind of school that we aspire to be in the future. We together with all of you are celebrating the exciting appointment of Joy as our 5th head of school. She'll begin in a matter of weeks, and she and I have been working together for actually 4 or 5 months to make sure the transition is a fantastic one for the school and for the community. We continue to believe that St. Andrews' mission and culture and educational philosophy are uniquely prepared to create leaders who will contribute to this very, very complex world that we're all living in. And obviously you, the alumni body who joined us today on the screen, you represent this vast alumni network who are doing such great work at this very, very important and difficult time. As I leave my work at St. Andrews after 42 years, I express my love and gratitude to all of you, and particularly on this reunion weekend, I thank the trustee leaders who've mentored me and supported me during my tenure. Henry Herndon, who began with me, Kitten Hagan, Hick Rowland, Ken Sweezy, and now Scott Sipprelle have all served as my leaders, my mentor, my supporter during these 24 years. And each one of them shared such important wisdom and insight with me. I've always believed that each St. Andrews head of school was uniquely prepared for the challenges of the particular era of their service to the school. And I believe the history of our board leaders have embodied that same trajectory. It seemed as if we had the right board chair, the right board president for the particular challenges and opportunities that we're facing the school. So what do board presidents or chairs of the Board of Trustees at St. Andrews do? Well, first of all, they honor and study and protect and strengthen the school's pursuit and articulation of our mission. And they seek to provide the important financial resources and human resources that heads of school need to be creative as they seek to create an exemplary educational and residential life experience for our students. And our board leaders create a culture on the board that mirrors the values and virtues of character and leadership that are taught at the school, with a special emphasis on the humanity of the Board of Trustees, dialogue that honors diversity and honors the integrity of all members. Finally, the Board of Trustees leaders help the head of school make the case for philanthropic support of St. Andrews in the spirit of the founder who launched this school with that incredible vision and incredible philanthropic gift to St. Andrews. And our board leaders practice philanthropy with generosity and enthusiasm themselves. Finally, our board leaders honor and protect financial aid as a cornerstone of St. Andrews. And they serve as the critical mentor, advisor, and supporter of the head of school as they work through day-to-day challenges and institutional direction planning. In his work as chair of our board over the past 5 years, Scott has excelled in all these responsibilities. As a member of the 40th reunion class of 1981, as a student who received financial aid during his career here, as a scholar and an athlete and a leader during his student career, and as a St. Andrews parent during his daughter Jessica's career, Scott understands the heart and soul of this school, and he believes fervently in its mission and in its future. He and his wife Tracy's philanthropic leadership support during my tenure created the Sipprelle Fieldhouse and the new renovated Amos Hall. During his leadership of the board, Scott has also led important renovations in our health center and our girls' dormitory project, which is now beginning its second year and will be completed next year. His leadership as the chair of the board, and before that as the chair of the finance committee, steered St. Andrews through turbulent periods of national economic instability and recovery, all the while keeping his eye on our ability to continue to support all our students in terms of their financial aid needs. For me, Scott has opened his full expertise, experience, and generosity of spirit to me as I've led St. Andrews. And in so doing, we've learned from one another, we've appreciated one another's strengths and passions and mutual commitment to this place, even in and especially as we work through the most complex educational era in our lifetime. It is not to diminish the incredible leadership of previous board chairs and previous board presidents to say that the leadership of a board of trustees of a secondary school or of a college today is the most complex leadership task in the history of all our institutions, just as the head of school position in the 21st century has reached new levels of complexity, sophistication, and opportunity. So as I welcome Scott to lead this session, I thank him personally for all he shares with St. Andrews each day, and I thank him on behalf of the alumni, on behalf of the faculty and the staff, and on behalf of all of the parents and past parents who have benefited from his leadership and his vision. And I'll turn the session over to Scott right now.
Thank you, Tad. That was very glowing, and it's been an honor, obviously, to serve with you. And I'll say that up front, since you are in your waning moments of a long and distinguished career at St. Andrews. And to all of my fellow alums out there, very sorry we can't be on campus celebrating together, but I do have some good news. The deferred celebration that we're going to have next summer for not one reunion class, but 3 reunion classes is going to be extraordinary and different and special and not to be missed. So please mark that on your calendar. I think it's June 10th. Is that right, Bernice or Chessa? So yeah, June 10th, that weekend. So let me just start by saying, even though I serve in the exalted position of chair of the Board of Trustees, I am just a temporary steward. This is your school, just as Tad steward or has been as the head of your school. And our role is to serve you and to serve what Tad and I have come to lovingly describe as a lifetime community. And we can talk a little bit more about how St. Andrews has, in our mind and hopefully in yours, evolved into a place that is not just a 4-year experience, it's really a lifetime experience. And I can say with complete sincerity that the friendships and the lessons I learned and made at St. Andrews have changed my life and are still with me. And I still celebrate those friendships and lessons every day. So Tad gave a really good description of what a board does, and I'm grateful for that, because I often get asked the question, what does the board actually do? And I usually don't have a very good answer for it, or at least not a succinct one. I think in most people's minds, boards appropriately operate in the background. And most of their work is pretty predictable and pretty routine. It's the kinds of things that Tad described on his list. But there are rare moments in the life of a board when their work is not predictable. It's very, shall I say, essential, maybe destiny changing. And it's those momentary shocks to the normal cadence of a board's operations that are really interesting, but really important from the standpoint of the sustainability of any institution. And that's when you need your board to perform. Interestingly, we really had 2 of those in front of our board over the last 18 to 24 months. They were critical decisions that had to be made in collaboration with our school leadership. One was our leadership transition. I'll talk briefly about that. And the other was the adjustment to a world under a pandemic. And then I'll talk a little bit about the state of the school, and then finish with any questions that you want to share. So leadership transition. We're not very good at it at St. Andrews. We've only had 4 heads in 90 years. So we don't have a lot of practice or experience, but it's the most important decision any organization ever makes is the choice of leaders. We had the benefit of doing our leadership transition the right way. There's only 2 ways to do leadership transition. One is an unplanned leadership change, and the other is a planned leadership change. And we opted for the latter. Tad and I, even before the conversation was public, were talking about his ambitions and desire and his expected tenure. And so in total, we probably planned about 2.5 years, both in terms of the quiet and then the public leadership search. We had to do our search during the pandemic, which made personal meetings difficult, but it actually, in some respects, was better for us because we are able to go deeper and more thoughtfully, and we had more meetings, and we looked at more candidates, and we studied more data, and we got tremendous survey information from all of you. And we spent a lot of time thinking about what is the model for leadership for St. Andrews, not looking backwards, but looking forwards. And I'm really pleased by the outcome, not just because we chose a St. Andrews alum who happens to be a Delaware native and our first female head of school, somebody who went to St. Andrews on scholarship, but because I think Joy really uniquely combines the 2 things we were looking for. One, who understood our missions and values and would be resolute in remaining committed to them. And then secondly, having the external experience and wisdom and judgment and character and humility to help us think about the world of future education and how to help us evolve, change, and grow. And I think she's going to be a great combination of those 2 assets. And also, really importantly, she's the glue our community needs. We have many generations with many different life experiences represented in our community, and they all matter. and we need to collaborate and talk together and come up with a plan for running a school that respects all perspectives and all generations and all points of view. And as you get to know Joy, if you don't already, she is just uniquely qualified to dialogue with every generation and every perspective, and just has a really great way about her. I mean, the fact that she's coxing for our Knoxontown Navy, and the fact that she was on the Zoom 10 minutes after our new class presidents for the incoming year were announced, just gives you a sense of her versatility and her ability to understand what we're all about and keep us true to that. So I'm really excited about that. Let me talk a little bit about COVID, because it was a really complex adjustment that we had to navigate through. Somebody has described our all residential boarding school as an educational cruise ship. And you know what happened to the cruise ship industry when the pandemic hit, right? They actually had to stop operating entirely. So we were frankly beset by a lot of the same challenges, being a place whose special sauce is about proximity and very close quarters and operating in very intimate spaces and hugging and being with each other. And we had to very quickly pivot to a world that didn't allow that. And I'm really proud of, on the educational product side, how well Tad and Elizabeth and the entire academic leadership team was able to pivot to virtual learning and actually to generate some approaches to teaching and learning that will probably be permanent, even as we go back to regular order in the fall of this coming year. We were beset, obviously, by some financial challenges. I think we did a very responsible thing. We froze tuition, not just for last year, but for the coming year as well. We issued very significant tuition rebates to all students to reflect the fact that we weren't operating at full capacity. We assisted those who, for whatever reason, couldn't get to campus or who had financial hardship through the pandemic. We spent about $500,000 as a school to safely prepare to operate, which we did 2 out of 3 semesters. Our spring and fall of this year were both in person, and we did it with changes in process and protocol. We only had 1 student come down with COVID during the entire year, which is really a testament to how well that worked. So it was a really extreme pivot. I think our community rose, performed at a really high level. And I do think that is brand and reputation enhancing for our parents, and our alums should be really proud of the school and how it operated during a very difficult time. The good news is, as we look at the competitive landscape in educational and boarding schools in particular, the school has never been in a stronger position. Our admission pipeline, our interviews, our selectivity, our yield rate are all at all-time highs, which is shocking given the stress in some of the other educational institutions out there. The state of our faculty and our leadership team is extremely strong. Retention rates are really high. Financial stability is very strong. Our college acceptances were extraordinary again this year, including our first female cadet at West Point. And we all got up and clapped for her and her 2 other colleagues who are going to the service academies this coming year. So we feel obviously really, really proud of the state of the school. I'm always the kind of person that worries when things are good, that there's something around the corner that you're not looking for. So we're not content to rest on our laurels. We're trying to be insightful and probing and honest with each other as we think about the quality of the product that we're delivering. not just for our parents today, but our parents tomorrow, and also for the alums, because you are permanently connected to this institution. We always feel we can do better. We can stretch further. We can innovate more. And certainly the world of education is one of the industries that's at a fulcrum point in terms of change, rate of change. And we don't know how that's going to affect us. We do know that affordability is increasingly a very serious question. And it's going to make us have to work even harder to keep that continuum of students here who come from every socioeconomic class and every background in every region of the country. That's our superpower, is that we bring all of these kids together from really diverse backgrounds and we make them roommates, and they start off looking at each other like, who are you? And by the time they graduate, they're not just roommates, they're teammates, they're friends, they're lifetime friends. And our school doesn't work unless we can bring all of those types of kids together, and that's really expensive to do. So I just will end my formal remarks by saying thank you for your belief in this institution. Some of you may have graduated relatively recently. Some of you graduated further ago, like me, 40 years ago. But the fact that you're still connected is really powerful. It's really meaningful to us. We want you to stay involved with us. We want your input. We want you to share the story of St. Andrews with everybody you know. And we want to ask for you to help us thrive. And for those of you that commit to the annual fund, we have 20 days left to get to our audacious $3 million goal for this year. That funds about 12 or 13% of the school's total operating budget. So it's really important. And we're still working very hard to fill out a $15 million challenge to fund financial aid in honor of Tad and Elizabeth and their commitment to bringing kids from every background to St. Andrews. And that money will help us to create essentially a lockbox so that we will never backslide on our commitment to financial aid and to keeping our doors open to everyone, regardless of means, which was our founders' intent. So with that, I will pause and stop. I see a couple of frozen screens. I'm hoping that isn't anybody who's actually fallen asleep on me out there, but I'll stop right there. I do see a couple of classmates who have gathered together over in that corner with the brick building, and I think they're actually have broken open a bottle of wine. Hi, guys. Any questions? You can type it into the chat or even blurt it out if you'd like. I guess I dealt with everything that was on everyone's mind, Tad. Yeah, do you want to add anything that I might have missed?
No, I thought you, I thought you described it so beautifully. You know, I think one of the things that I'm sure you're all feeling this way right now, if you are in the United States and you're in that period of time where you're beginning to experience the small things in life that we once took for granted. I think what was really wonderful for me and for Scott and for the faculty was at the end of the year, we were able to do 2 vaccination clinics for the students here on campus. Commencement was remarkably normal. It was unmasked. It was joyous. Parents were there. And then the next week, the last week of school for the underformers, the mask came off completely outside. So the students, they learned a lot about sacrifice for causes larger than themselves. They learned a lot about the importance of supporting public health, but there's no question that that energy that I'm sure you're feeling in your own families and in your own communities is building for really a joyous 2021, 2022 year. There's just no question that the return to normalcy will seem miraculous, and it will create, I think, new appreciation for all the traditions and rituals that make up a St. Andrew's year. And I was so proud of the way the students and faculty and staff handled their responsibilities. And at the same time, just really do look forward to seeing that energy come back to life next year. You'll see that in the photographs that you'll see in the magazine from commencement. It was really a beautiful day, and there was just so much excitement and so much wonder in the opportunity to be together on the front lawn in the ways that we had always expected, and that meant a lot to all of us. Absolutely. I think Chris Oden has a hand up. It's great to see you, Chris. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Ted. Thanks. This is great. I'm curious. I think Scott mentioned techniques you had learned during this pandemic and virtual instruction that you were thinking about keeping. And I was wondering if you'd talk about some of them, because I know as a teacher myself, there are some things that were intriguing, kind of cool to play with. And so I just wonder what you thought.
Yeah, such a good question. You know, for you as a teacher, you know this so well. So I think for all of us in the teaching profession, all of our assumptions about proximate teaching, in-person teaching were flipped radically in March of 2020. And so that particular 2-week period, which was spring break at St. Andrews, we had to pivot. And like all of you in your own professions, we found ourselves in a completely new world by the time we came back from spring vacation. So I think there was that phase where we were learning how to teach virtually and to connect to students and to care for students and to advise and mentor students. And that period of time was really successful in the way we were able to develop our academic schedule, the way we were able to dig deep into the principles of academic teaching and learning at St. Andrews, those same qualities of engagement and frequent opportunities for assessment and reassessment, opportunities to stay after class for conversations with individual students. We tried to replicate in a virtual way those issues. This year was, as Scott pointed out, was an interesting year because we had our students on campus in the fall and in the spring, but we still had several international students who couldn't come. So they were still learning in the classroom. So in a couple of my classes, I had 2 or 3 international students who were in class virtually with our 12 or 13 around the seminar table. So learning how to do that, learning how to create assessments, and learning how to recreate that sense of engagement and collaboration in a blended classroom, in a virtual classroom, in a real classroom, I thought was fascinating. I thought that the return to authentic in-person teaching led to much more intentional and even more passionate teaching than we had ever seen before, again, because we had missed it so much. And so there was this embrace of that. So I think what we've learned is that we're versatile, that good teaching is good teaching, that connecting with students is powerful and important, and honoring students where they were was very important. And of course, the other thing which all of us in education learned is obviously for some students, virtual learning, depending on their socioeconomic circumstances, was a comfortable thing. For many of our students who were from less comfortable financial circumstances, virtual learning was very, very complex and difficult. And we had to, as Scott mentioned, do a lot of work to make sure that they were feeling full support from the school. And those students in particular were so deeply appreciative of being back on campus early in March and to develop that sense of a second home that was so important to them. So many different things. And I think one of the things that I'll be doing over the next couple of years is trying to do a lot of
I would add a perspective which isn't purely an educational perspective, but as somebody who invests in a myriad of different industries, it's thought that the pandemic didn't necessarily change the trajectory of the future, it just accelerated it by 5 or 10 years. So everybody knows these virtual tools now, and the ability to use digital platforms, for example, to bring in, say, outside content or expertise, maybe even into the classroom that you wouldn't have done in sort of the traditional teacher and student lesson plan is really interesting. And so just being able to outside speakers, outside content, maybe some asynchronous type learning modules, not as a replacement, just as sort of a supplement to the way we teach, is something that could be very interesting, and we'll obviously have to watch that. Sue Moon, thanks for your comment about financial aid. All 4 of the Sipprelle boys were also recipients of a generous financial aid package funded by the family of a former student. So it's really important. One of the things I would say about the socioeconomic mix of our students, the board and me in particular studies really closely the way we allocate our financial aid budget, which is very significant, $8.5 million, maybe $9 million a year. And we have had over half of our students, I believe, get some form of financial aid, but it's not all. So we don't have a school that is either full pay or full financial aid. We have every continuum and every slice of the diagram in between there as well, which is really important that we don't hollow out the, those middle-class families as well, who are so important to the kind of community that we build here. Ian.
Hey guys. Good. So I have 2 questions. One of them is really short and directed at Tad, and then the other one is for Tad and Scott. First one is every time I see the Blue Jays on TV, I notice they're playing from Buffalo, and so I'm wondering if you've gotten your tickets yet. I think about you. Yeah.
Ian, first of all, it's great to see you. And we've always wanted to be a big league city, and this is our very temporary identity. So my brother has been going to games, and I do plan a return to Buffalo to watch Major League Baseball, as long as that remains a rare commodity, because it's been very exciting. I've been in that ballpark a lot. It's a great little minor league ballpark. And so, yeah, we Buffalonians are thrilled.
Awesome.
To be in there.
That's great. Yep. Very cool. Cool. So yeah, the longer question is related to a word I learned over the last 10 years raising some girls, is the word pedagogy.
Yes.
And we had our I didn't know any of this stuff beforehand, but my K through 8 period, they went to a kind of project-based, kind of, they call it progressive education, not necessarily political, but progressive education, where it's very kid-centric, whole child. And then now my oldest is in an IB program, International Baccalaureate, and and both experiences were totally different from what I had as a kid. And I've not totally different. I mean, I had a few progressive elements at St. Andrews, definitely. I think of Dr. Chapin.
Yes.
Yes. Think of several. But as you guys, St. Andrews has navigated so many trends in terms of becoming co-ed in the 70s and becoming more diverse, and then having the facilities have just massively expanded. I think with a clear need. And so I'm wondering, does the board? I know that pedagogy decisions are really kind of joint between the board and the staff and the faculty. And I'm just wondering, as you guys respond to what's out there with parents and and what you hear, and like I'm just wondering if either of those kind of intersect and just where the whole pedagogy discussion is right now, kind of, one on the more academic scale, which I mostly experienced at St. Andrews, versus, the IB thing is amazing in terms of, like, it's almost like they're in liberal arts college right now.
Yes.
Like, and so I'm just opening that up, just kind of wondering what kind of thoughts you guys have and what you're seeing in the market and feeling.
Let me take a shot first, Tad, and then you can course correct me as required. So most elements of decision making are really clear that it's either board governance question or this is a head of school management question. Your question is really intriguing because it's sort of at the intersection of strategy and operations. And we have a great conversation at our board. We have one of our committees of the board is the education committee. And it's in that forum that Tad and his academic leadership team present questions on the state of the academic program and innovation around the program. We hear from faculty leaders, we hear from department heads, we hear from students. Tad oftentimes will sit back and just let us interact directly with students and department chairs and teachers. And it's always the most fascinating part of our board weekend because our trustees are, this is a really interesting, diverse, experienced, wise group that are throwing questions from backgrounds in the military service, in business, in education, in healthcare, in all walks and fields of life. And it's a bit of a seminar weekend for all of us. And I know Tad says that a lot of those discussions sort of frame and inform the way he thinks about our program and what's working and where we are going to tinker and innovate. So it's a really fascinating question, especially given the rate of change in every industry driven by technology. I can't give you a more precise answer than that, other than to say it's something we think and talk about a lot.
Yeah, I totally agree with Scott. I think, one of the things that I've learned in 40 years is, education is one of those professions that goes through certain ideological fads. And I've been around long enough to watch these ideological ideas come through, and they're all good, but they're rarely what they promise, which is the new truth, the new innovation, the new enlightenment that's going to lead to a change in American education. So where we've gone mostly through Elizabeth's leadership of the academic program and through the work that I've been trying to do is we've tried to avoid a kind of rigid ideological embrace of one particular perspective. We've tried to keep thinking about the truth of 21st century education. One of the things that we now know through research is that all students learn differently and all students benefit from a variety of teaching methods. And, for me, the most powerful teaching method that I used is now a teaching method, that is increasingly under suspicion. So my best teachers in high school and in college were lecturers. And I still feel like lecturing by a dramatic and passionate professor or teacher has a place, although the educational ideology right now would say that that's too teacher-centered and not student-centered enough. So I think where St. Andrews has tried to land is what Elizabeth calls a sweet spot between ideological extremes. And we also have tried to keep our focus where it's always been at St. Andrews, really for all 90 years. It's always been focused on helping students develop intellectual curiosity, intellectual independence, and intellectual confidence so that they can go on to successful careers in education and in graduate school and in their professional life. But I think you put your finger on a really, really interesting topic. And we have some educators on this call who know how important this question is and how complicated this question is. And we also know that over the next 10 years, the world will continue to change, and Joy and her educational leadership will evolve the school and the educational program in those kind of congruent ways. So it'll be interesting to watch.
Thank you.
Mike Coolwine has a question about the emphasis on greater diversity at St. Andrews. where it wants to be now with respect to that, or is it still striving to improve? We are always striving to improve. Certainly with respect to the student body, we have an extremely diverse student body as far as socioeconomic, racial background, international mix of our students. But we could always do better on making our student body more representative of the country at large. You know, do we have military families? Do we have the children of police officers and healthcare workers? You know, so we're always certainly in the building the admissions funnel, looking for really interesting kids from a range of backgrounds that are going to improve the mix and mosaic of our community. Certainly on the faculty side, since we have such a high bar of excellence, and living and teaching in central Delaware and committing to a 24-hour-a-day job is hard. And Tad speaks to the board frequently about the ongoing challenges of getting the most diverse and representative faculty. So I think we would candidly say our work is not done there, and we're striving to improve, always striving to improve, to get top-notch faculty that are representative of our student body. The work is never done, but when you can land a great faculty member and they commit to a long career, that really is probably the most powerful thing we do, because they touch hundreds, if not thousands, of students over the course of a career, and that's what our business is.
Yeah, I think as Scott said, this is always, you know, first and foremost in our minds, and it's, you know, it's something that St. Andrews has a great honor to pursue. And I would say that yeah, the work of diversity and the work of getting the kids to know one another is yeah, it's so dependent on being fully residential. It's so dependent on having the kind of broad socioeconomic, racial, ethnic, international diversity within your school. And then it is so dependent on just encouraging the students to learn how to live with one another. And as you all know, we're living in a time in this country and in the world where we're increasingly polarized. And the reason why I think it's so important for all of us to continue to invest in the St. Andrews idea and the St. Andrews financial aid program and the St. Andrews residential and diversity and athletic and artistic programs is this is the only solution to the problem that is facing this country. It's creating communities where students are actually able at a young age to live together, to study together, to play together, and to create together. And this is a really unique and powerful model, and it's the only chance we have to move from where we're going into a position where we'll be seeking a lot more unity and collaboration among all students and all families and all people in our country and in our world. And that's been, for me, the most inspiring part about being part of St. Andrews for so long, is to watch just this evolution of a school that with each passing year becomes more and more interesting, more and more diverse, and more united at the same time. And that's been really important to watch.
And if I might add on to that, if I could, we've got a couple of members of the class of 1970.
Gordon, you just muted out.
Sorry about that. A couple of guys from the class of 71 here who, to honor their 50th reunion and their class leader, Tom Hooper, have created a fund to support exactly this kind of work at St. Andrews. So we had a Zoom call with them earlier this week. Tad and Elizabeth were on there, and Devin Dupre, our Dean of Diversity. So we're it's great to see alumni who are here at the dawn of integration really saying this is something that we believe in and want to continue to support.
If I may add there, Gordon, I was in the class of 66 as a sixth former when our first African-American student, Dave Grant, came. I'm from Louisiana. I'm from a deep Southerner. And I can't tell you how moved I am by how the school has moved toward diversity. We have stepped out of and gone beyond just a sort of traditional preppy English prep school model, which was very much still the model as I experienced it at St. Andrews. And some of the developments, Tad, I never interacted with you much during your tenure here, but I want to honor you for what you all have achieved. And to me, it is a fabulous development. And I just, as an old timer, and I remember when the only foreign students we had typically were the War Memorial Scholars, who came in for 1 year their senior year, and how much that has grown. Thank you. It's very cool to see.
Well, thanks so much. I mean, I think the reason I've loved being at St. Andrews is I got a lot of energy and a lot of courage and a lot of vision from the fact that I never felt that St. Andrews' mission was to replicate the New England boarding school model. I felt like we were destined to be different. And I've just been lucky enough to be at a school that allowed us to chart our own course. And all of you have been integral in allowing us to do that. But I appreciate your words. I agree with you. It's been incredible for us as a school, for instance, this year to experience what the Asian community and the Asian American community have been facing during the pandemic was incredibly educational and incredibly important for the entire community to understand. The pain of that particular community during this time was stark, and it brought the community here together in really, really powerful ways.
I have a question, and perhaps it should have come in the pedagogy session that I was in this morning, for which forgive me. But one, a video that has impacted on me this past year was the Netflix video, Social Dilemma. And it brought to me, I mean, I was trained in and I'm grateful for the critical learning and critical assessment skills that I began to learn at St. Andrews. But I'm realizing, I remember in the 60s, there was a big brouhaha about a movie, a film called The Hidden Persuaders, which was in the 60s version of getting subliminal messages through media. But I'm seeing with artificial intelligence and everything that we are being engaged and confronted at sub-rational levels. And it puts before me a challenge at a level of critical thinking way beyond the skills that I learned. Yeah. And I'm wondering to what extent and how is St. Andrews pedagogy addressing that challenge?
Yeah, it's such a good question. I think the dawning of this, if you think about just the 24 years that I've been head, it's hard to believe, but when I just began, the internet itself was, in its infancy. Sure. And so everything that has happened in terms of our national discourse, the way we get our news, the way we view the world has changed dramatically, and it's tied to what Scott was saying. We're living in a time where the country and the world are changing with just frightening rapidity. So we've got to be agile and flexible, and our teachers have to get better and better and better at helping the students be discerning and to be patient and thoughtful and careful about the conclusions that they draw based on the information that they're getting. So this is happening obviously powerfully in science. It's happening powerfully in history and religious studies. And it's tied, I think, to some of the innovations that you probably heard about earlier today, where we're doing a lot more exhibitions and oral presentations, followed by deep follow-up from faculty and from peers, in order to make sure that all the different readings and assumptions that the kids are making are valid. But I think you're pointing to something that's going to become increasingly interesting and important for us to do as we go into the future.
I have to say something too, because this is sort of my favorite topic. Having invested in some social media companies, I can tell you without question that these tools are designed to be addictive. And the more addictive they are, the more powerful they are, the more valuable they are. And as part of that exchange, you have tools that are also manipulative, and they take shortcuts, and they lead to lack of critical thinking. And so one of the reasons I think the St. Andrews approach to education is so important, it's the antithesis of what these tools are designed to do. And when a teacher says, oh, you heard this, or you're repeating that, well, give me an example of that. And what do you think about the argument that the other person made? You know, that whole process of discussion and conversation and stretching perspective is essentially the antidote to manipulative social media tools, which are infecting the country right now. So I think when I talk to parents who are sending their kids to St. Andrews, in fact, I just got a note from one trustee today who was speaking to a parent. They sent their kid to St. Andrews specifically to get away from social media. So, I mean, think about sort of the future opportunity for us to be an antidote to a lot of those ills. It's pretty powerful. We might be done. Bernice, do you want to say anything in closing?
No, I'm just excited to see everybody join today. I think this was really a great opportunity to hear from Scott. And you get such a rare opportunity to do so. So Scott, I want to thank you for taking the time today. It was really important. So thanks.
I love seeing all.
Enjoy your reunion.
Yeah, I loved seeing all of you and look forward to seeing you in person next year.
Hope we'll see you too as well, Tad.
Tad will be there.
I look forward to it. I really look forward to it. I miss you all. I appreciate you joining us today. Stay well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Ted.
Thank you all so much.
Fun.
Bye-bye.
Thank
you.
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.